Ananda. Back in the mango grove, Shakyamuni Buddha continued to teach, attended only by Ananda. All the other disciples had followed Manjushri to Vasali. Suddenly, the grove was filled with a golden light. "What's going on?" asked Ananda. "It's a sign that Vimalakirti and Manjushri have finished talking. They are on their way back," replied the Buddha.
Not only were Vimalakirti and Manjushri returning to the mango grove, they were followed by everyone who had witnessed their conversation. All the kings, queens, ministers, monks, and people from all walks of life. In a chaotic makeshift procession, which I'm sure must have included all the usual Indian paraphernalia, like parasols, horns, elephants, horses, peacock feathers, fans, dancing girls, gaudy colors, sparkling fabrics, lights, and incense.
Okay. As soon as he entered the mango grove, Vimalakirti threw himself at the Buddha's feet, like a felled tree, another lesson to note. Until now, this oily-haired sensualist has seemed arrogant, spoiled, and frankly not easy to get on with. But here we are told that he humbly prostrated himself before Gautama Buddha and then circumambulated him, followed by all the arhats and bodhisattvas.
Is that me now?
Yes, that's you.
As Vimalakirti paid homage, Shariputra updated Buddha about what had happened. "What's a smell?" asked Ananda. "I don't recognize it." So Ananda, even though he has a fantastic memory and knows everything Buddha says, he's kind of clueless. And I think he's presented, first he says, "What's going on?" and then, "What's the smell?" So maybe I'm reading too much into it. It will be neat to see in the Sutra if it's the same way. "That's the scent exuded by bodhisattvas from the fragrant Buddha field," explained the Buddha. "But even the members of our own Sangha seem to have picked it up," said Ananda. "How did that happen?" "They smell like the fragrant Buddha field bodhisattvas because they ate Tathagata's Gand Hat Ta Mak Ta leftovers," said Buddha.
Why is food, and for that matter, leftover food, such a big deal in this story? Food generally implies sustenance, and eating food is one of the ways we maintain our bodies. But from the Buddhist point of view, body, speech, and mind all require methods of sustenance to maintain the thread. Deluded beings like us make a terrible fuss about maintaining our physical body, but the emphasis in Buddha Dharma is on how to sustain the mind. And here, in the Vimalakirti Sutra, the Tathagata, I will skip it, leftovers, led to a profound and lengthy discussion about how to do just that.
Samadhi meditation, we are told, is the only method for sustaining the mind. While this statement can be taken metaphorically, it should also be taken literally. Meditation concentration, and calm abiding definitely do maintain mind's health. At the same time, as mind is in charge of and leads the body, an experienced meditator's appetite for food will be noticeably different than that of someone who doesn't meditate. The greed experienced by non-meditators can be insatiable. Some people eat like hogs. I've been told that not long before the fall of the Roman Empire, rich Romans would stuff themselves, then vomit so they could start the meal all over again. Even today, most of us are more or less bulimic. Just as we don't need more than 1 or 2 pairs of shoes, and we certainly don't need so many clothes that our wardrobe bursts open, we eat far more than is strictly necessary. More often than not, we don't eat to nourish and sustain ourselves, but just because we want to. It's ridiculous. Our intake of food is driven by want, not necessity. But once you start to practice meditation, even if your samatha practice is mediocre, you won't need to eat as much, as you did, because very little will give you all the energy you need. And remember, a diminished appetite for food isn't even a miracle. It is merely a side effect of samatha practice.
Starlet, will you be reading?
Yes, sorry. As we practice, as we get more and more accustomed to the right view and more savvy about how to overcome distraction, our definition of sustenance, maintenance, and food will change. We will become more discerning about our eating habits and will see that it is far healthier to eat real food than ready-made processed meals. We will also become more discerning about many of the other diets we follow, like our diets of sound, clothes, cars, bank balances, pension plans, relationships, friendships, and so on.
How to free ourselves from want and need is a very big subject. But essentially, it can be achieved through practice, and as we will gradually free ourselves, our definition of sustenance will change. A major step towards following a healthy diet is learning how to deal with the need to eat. Also, deluded beings cannot understand non-duality, but we do feel a need for union. And this is why we long for relationships and friendships, hugs, contact, intercourse, kissing, pinching.
Back in the mango grove, all those who had followed Manjushri to Vasali had now returned. So, Vimalakirti, said the Buddha, how do you view the Buddha? Buddha is beyond form, said Vimalakirti, beyond feeling, beyond karmic formation, beyond symbol, beyond time. Tathagata is not darkness, not illumination, not a name, not a mark, not a reference, not powerful, not weak. Tathagata has no form, no eyes, no ears, no gender, and so on.
For most of us, the term Buddha means the historical Buddha Sakyamuni, whose manifestation adhered to the categories of gender, time, and space. But here, Vimalakirti explains how to see Buddha on the absolute level, how to see the absolute Buddha. Then a little later in this chapter, the rug is once again pulled out from under our feet, when Buddha asked Vimalakirti to show everyone Buddha Aksobhya and his Buddha field. In an instant, Vimalakirti performed a stupendous miracle, and the magnificent Buddha field of Abhirati was displayed for all to see.
As always, the setting of this scene is important. A huge audience of disciples had just been told that Buddha was beyond form, feeling, and so on. Yet, Sakyamuni Buddha then asked Vimalakirti to reveal the physical manifestation of Aksabhya's Buddha field. Vimalakirti did, and as Buddha asked, and the text suggests, it was as if he had merely drawn back a curtain. There displayed before him, everyone saw the high mountains, wide rivers, lush valleys, gleaming palaces surrounded by lotus ponds and swans, and forests of wish-fulfilling trees, and bright sky full of birds that make up Aksabhya's realm. And whatever Buddha fields look like to us, they are defined in terms of non-duality. For example, a meadow in a Buddha field will have no east. And if there is no east, there can be no south, no middle, no boundary, no top, and no bottom. All of which takes us straight back to non-duality and how to explain the unexplainable.
The epilogue. The final part of the Vimalakirti Sutra is a discussion between Manjushri, Vimalakirti, and the other bodhisattvas about the future, specifically about what will happen in the time of degeneration long after the Buddha's paranirvana.
Some of us might still want to label everything we read in the Vimalakirti Sutra as myth and legend, or at best, an historical account of events that took place millennia ago. We might also think that Shariputra, Ananda, and everyone else alive at the time were extremely lucky to have known the Buddha personally and to have met such remarkable bodhisattvas as Vimalakirti in the flesh. As none of us have had that opportunity, were we therefore born in the wrong place or the wrong time? Not necessarily.
In this epilogue, the Buddha clearly states that if this sutra is written down, treasured, kept in your home, or even worn, if you copy excerpts into a notebook and venerate each word, or bless yourself with this sutra, or if you love discussing this sutra and love hearing others talk about it, you will accumulate merit. And not just a little merit. Imagine giving all the Buddhas of the 10 directions and Bodhisattvas of the 3 times lunch and dinner for eons, while continuously making offerings of hundreds of kilos of gold, diamonds, silver, and other valuable and desirable material goods. Wouldn't that kind of generosity accumulate a huge amount of merit? Of course it would. An immense, incalculable mountain of merit, but nothing in comparison to the merit you can accumulate, particularly in these degenerate times, by merely discussing the subjects mentioned in this sutra for a few moments.
When Buddha fell silent, Lord Indra, king of the gods, rose to his feet and volunteered to be the protector of this Dharma. No matter where this sutra is heard, taught, discussed, printed, written, stored, or found, in cities, villages, streets, gardens, swimming pools, hermitages, or mountaintops, Lord Indra pledged to venerate and pay homage to everyone who is touched by it, who loves it and longs to preserve it. Buddha.
Buddha rejoiced, and evidently also Anne's dog, at Lord Indra's commitment. Such discussions are the supreme offering of the Dharma of truth, he said. To protect any strategies, wisdom, or books that are in conflict with samsara is an incalculably worthy activity. If you want to resist or create friction with duality, you will find all the ammunition you need in this sutra. It is the best. Therefore, King of the Gods, you are doing the right thing. Protect it well and treasure it, as the Vimalakirti Sutra is an exceptionally effective weapon for wreaking havoc, even mass destruction, on the dualistic world.
There we go. Okay. Finally, Buddha turned to Ananda and asked him to cherish this teaching, at which everyone in the mango grove, the bodhisattvas, arhats, Shravakas, gods, demigods, Rakshasas, and Yakshas rejoiced. Oh, that was it. By now you must have realized that the Vimalakirti Sutra is no ordinary sutra. It's difficult for those of us living in today's mundane world to swallow the truth when we hear it, and the Vimalakirti Sutra contains a great deal about the very highest of high truths. Don't imagine, though, that the nature of the highest truth is mystical or mythological, because it isn't. Although the absolute truth cannot be expressed, conceived, or conceptualized, all the techniques and tools necessary to establish it have been laid out for us by the Buddha himself. The Vimalakirti Sutra, for example, describes astonishingly effective methods for deconstructing anything and everything that is not the truth.
I know I'm repeating myself, but make no mistake, this sutra is extremely profound. And it's because sutras like this are so profound that we study the commentaries, the sastras, which help explain them. Buddha's disciples and celebrated bodhisattvas wrote some of the commentaries available to us, but far more were written by great Indian, Chinese, Japanese, and Tibetan scholars. These scholars were not just logicians or theoreticians. They were highly accomplished practitioners who put the teachings they found in sutras, like the Vimalakirti Sutra, into practice, and as a result, no longer fell victim to praise, criticism, gain or loss, an accomplishment they demonstrated again and again.
The discussion we find in this sutra are not mere intellectual exercises. They are not like the philosophical speculations that bear Waring. French existentialists engaged in at the beginning of the 20th century in coffee shops on the left bank on the Seine, as they squinted through thick bottle-bottom glasses and chewed fat cigars. I can state with complete confidence that they every that every single method Buddha offered to help sentient beings is rooted in the conversation recorded in the Vimalakirti Sutra and other similar texts. Lighting candles, for example, and burning incense, shaving your head, and renouncing to mundane world, refraining from eating meat and having sex are just a few of the methods mentioned. Other methods were designed for bodhisattvas who are actively encouraged to do anything and everything that temporal societies frown upon or consider immoral, like stealing and lying.
I don't want to steal or lie, but boy, the bodhisattva life sounds great. So, next paragraph. We have all heard stories about bodhisattvas who gave away their most precious possessions, their children, estates, homes, and even their beloved spouses to help others. And of course, there's the famous story about the bodhisattva who offered his own body to a family of hungry tigers. But for most of us, this kind of activity sounds not only far-fetched, but as unbelievable as the fairy tale about a princess who kissed a frog. Yet historically there were, and still are, bodhisattvas who can chew and swallow such seemingly unbelievable stories. These bodhisattvas can drink the nectar of all the subjects discussed in this sutra because they have both crushed the habit of clinging to their egos and demolished the wall of duality. Such bodhisattvas are not bound by the distinctions of good and bad, or quantity and quality. They see everything as an illusion, or a dream, or magic. They have a few qualms about offering their own flesh to hungry tigers, as the rest of us would have about flattening a sandcastle. They have as few qualms about offering their own flesh to hungry tigers as the rest of us would have about flattening a sandcastle, however beautifully it has been sculpted. And if, by giving away their most treasured possession, they can help someone, they don't think twice. Basically, bodhisattvas do whatever it takes to help.
The Vi- the Vimalakirti Sutra is not an expedient sutra because unlike the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, the Dhammamukha Sutra, or the Hataka Tales, or Yakata Tales, or even the Vinaya Tales, at a certain level it cannot be taken literally. Expedient sutras were conditional teachings that were taught for those who think in terms of ethics, morality, discipline, reincarnation, karma, and consequences. For people who want to do the right thing and don't want to do the wrong thing. The Vimalakirti Sutra is definitely not that kind of sutra.
Expedient sutras are for those who cannot chew on really big ideas. In the same way babies cannot chew or swallow solid food, expedient sutras are designed for those who find big ideas difficult to digest. Expedient sutras are interesting and easy to accept. They employ ordinary logic and thought patterns like don't kill, don't steal, walk slowly, wash your hands properly, don't use harsh words, sit straight, focus on your breath. All compounded things are impermanent. All emotions are pain. And similar teachings that require a little explanation are also amongst those designed by the Buddha to be chewable and digestible.
Teachings like those found in the Vajranchandika Sutra The Vimalakirti Sutra and the Manjushri Sutra are more akin to solid food, or a shot of tequila that you down in one without salt or lemon. They should use lime. They are definitely not prim and proper moralistic teachings. They are direct and go straight to the heart of the matter.
Although many of us are inspired by and may even be fairly familiar with the Buddhist teachings, we don't really understand them. Truly, to understand the Buddha's Dharma is difficult, extremely difficult. For example, don't kid yourself that you understand sunyata, because you don't. Habitual, subjective mind does not allow itself to understand sunyata. Although we love to think that our minds are objective, they aren't. In fact, there is no such thing as an objective mind. Quite the opposite, as the dose of subjective mind to be found in human beings like us is dangerously high, especially amongst adults and the well-educated. Clever people, painfully overstuffed as they are with their own ideas, are usually the most subjective and opinionated of all. But don't bother trying to point out their complete lack of objectivity, because they won't listen.
In their sastras, great commentators like Nagarjuna, Asanga, Vasubandhu, Bhavavika, Santadeva, Maitreya, and the rest mapped out a systematic way of thinking about, deciphering, and deconstructing thoughts and ideas from every possible angle. These texts are invaluable because without them, it is almost impossible to get to the bottom of the Buddhist concepts like sunyata in one go. That is why the beginning of the Vajra Chektika Sutta, which sets the scene for the rest of the sutta, is so important and a very good example of just how important scene setting in sutras can be. For it, we learn, along with many other details, how the Buddha's begging bowl was washed, how his table was set, how a Dharma robe was folded correctly, how a monk's seat was covered in a special cloth, and that when the Buddha sat cross-legged, his back was very straight. We are also treated to beautiful descriptions of trees and the serenity of the, of the natural environment in which the teachings took place. Setting the scene was taken very seriously, and it's only after the scene has been set that we were presented with the teachings on sunyata.
In the Vajra Kedika Sutra, there is an account of a conversation between the Buddha and Subhoti that included a very significant question. Have I taught? Asked Buddha. No, you haven't, replied Subhuti. And Buddha agreed. Exactly, he said. Buddha never taught. At the same time, we must remember that sunyata should never be understood as a total negation or a form of nihilism. This point is demonstrated exquisitely in the Vimalakirti Sutra. Like the Vajra Kedika Sutra, the scene is set with scrupulous care and in great detail. Remember the very beginning of the book where Buddha miraculously transformed 500 parcels into one, then fits the whole universe beneath it. It's mind-boggling stuff, like watching a fantasy movie. In less than 5 minutes, the reader is hooked, then brought back down to earth with a bump.
One thing I love about this sutra is that it involves so many larger-than-life characters, like Shariputra, Madhyayana, Ananda, and Subhuti. These men were the epitome of the greatest philosophers, thinkers, and spiritual renunciants of that time. And just as today's intellectuals and academics despise empty-headed, coarse, nouveau riche businessmen, they were horrified by Vimalakirti. How could such a Philistine know anything worthwhile? As far as they were concerned, all Vimalakirti was good for was making money, devouring rich food, throwing dissolute parties, then making more money. Did he even have access to his inner world? Of course not.
See,
I had a question. Yeah, I had a question about if you scroll back up to the paragraph right at the top of the previous paragraph. Well, a little bit further in the little questions there. Have I taught? No, you haven't taught. Exactly, Buddha never thought. That was reminding me of meditate, but meditate like you're not meditating. There was something at the very beginning that was meditate, but don't meditate. So I guess the question is, have I taught? No, you haven't taught. Was it just that I'm living by example? Like, where do we get the idea of teachings and calling them teachings if they weren't taught? Is that just like the backward step of what energy was bringing that forward? I'm trying to hold the non-duality of both of those.
So Cassie, isn't viewing someone as a teacher rather than simply a colleague, a facilitator, a co-equal, sort of creating a power-up position, a differentiation? And so every time I hear, have I taught, or, are you a teacher? It's like, no, because we all teach each other. We're all equals. We teach each other, we learn from each other. And I linked that little part, I don't know if anyone else did, to the Buddha saying, teach yourself. In other words, take what I say, try it on for yourself, and take what serves you. So in a sense, he's not saying, here's the dictum, but here's a smorgasbord, and find your path. Does that make, well, that's where I went.
Well, I have a little different take on it. That on the night of Buddha's enlightenment, he said all beings are now enlightened or whatever. So he can't teach anything because they already know it. It's a matter of them discovering what they already know. So that's kind of how I take it.
It's interesting how it's written out. Have I taught? Asked Buddha. No, you haven't, replied Subhuti, and the Buddha agreed. Exactly, he said. Buddha never taught. He doesn't say, I never taught. He says, Buddha never taught. So kind of, to me, it begs the question of what's the difference between this person who asked the question and Buddha? Does that mean anything?
I think that's a great place to start looking. I love that.
And the other thing too, I think, is that whoever is or isn't teaching, the question isn't being asked, is there not learning? Because there is learning going on, and there is discernment going on, there is awakening going on. And I think it kind of falls in line with, awakening to what you already are. But that's what's there. You might not be able to teach what you already are, but you do need to wake up to what you already are, be aware of it.
Thanks, guys.
One thing I love about this sutra is that it involves so many larger than life characters, like Shariputra.
I just read that paragraph. It's the next one.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Nelda. We ignorant beings habitually judge by appearances. Given Vimalakirti's looks and lifestyle, would any of us have guessed that he knew anything at all about the Dharma, let alone that he was so realized? He was the kind of man he would ask about the price of silver or gold, but none of us would even think of consulting him about the meaning of Shunyata. And as for his ability to deconstruct the teachings as he did, unimaginable.
How they must have stared at the vulgar, obscenely expensive jewelry that dripped from his body, not to mention his glistening skin, the result of hours spent soaking in perfumed bath as his girls exfoliated every inch of his skin with bean powder soap and precious oils. Such details about how the rich lived appear in several sutras, not just this one. They are important because what Vimalakirti looked like and how he lived helped set the scene for the rest of the sutra.
The Vimalakirti Sutra demonstrates again and again that understanding the wisdom that is the ultimate truth need not be approached using conventional methods. The Vimalakirti Sutra demonstrates again and again that understanding the wisdom that is the ultimate truth need not be approached using conventional methods. Our habit is to study a subject by reading, writing, questioning, debating, making footnotes, library hopping, and doing a great deal of contemplation. But actually, enlightenment can be attained using any method whatsoever. Shariputra's sex change, a certain Buddha's leftover food, and the use of delicious fragrances are just some of the methods that evoke the tantric practice of visualization. When we practice visualization, we imagine being both genders, whose bodies could be any color, who might have any number of arms and legs and heads. They also have the ability to sit on a fragile lotus petals without crushing them.
If a little lemon juice is added to some milk, what happens? The milk curdles and the whey and curd separate. On the face of it, lemons have nothing to do with milk. Yet once you know this simple trick, you can make curd. The Tibetan word for skillful methods is thabs, in Sanskrit upaya. Thabs brings with it the connotation of trick or even catalyst, because skillful methods speed things up without affecting the elements involved. In this case, we use skillful methods to tame the mind, and as the Buddha, Manjushri, Maitreya, Sandideva, and all the great masters have said, the mind really does need taming. So we sit up straight and look at our minds. But what does sitting with a straight back have to do with the mind? It doesn't make sense. If sitting straight backed really does help tame the mind, shouldn't sleeping straight backed work too? Or walking straight backed? No, not at all. Because it's only sitting with the straight back that quickly and painlessly brings about the right effect.
Ideally, a skilled spiritual master will change the skillful method or trick he uses to suit the capacity of the person he is dealing with. Does lemon have the same effect on wine that it has on cow's milk? No. Even if liters and liters of lemon juice were added to wine, it would not separate into curds and whey. Similarly, a skillful method that works extremely well for one person might be useless for another person. That is why the path is so meticulous and complex, and why it's so intriguing. When the right trick is applied to the right person, the right result is achieved. The Mahayana really excels when it comes to this kind of method, and especially the Mahayana path of Tantra, which knows all the tricks.
I would like to mention that this is making me think of cooking. It feels like when you have anything that you want to cook, you can cook it in specific ways, and there's certain spices that you can use with it. So it kind of feels like each person is different and each person has a specific recipe.
The Vimalakirti Sutra isn't tantric text. It's a Mahayana sutra, yet many of the statements made in this text are identical to those made in the Tantrayana. In fact, some of the most important tantric principles can be found in this sutra. Or to put it another way, the courage, openness, and outrageousness of the Vajrayana, as well as its often unnerving, even shocking methods, are direct outcome of the teachings and wisdom that are openly discussed in the Vimalakirti Sutra, which in turn provides a firm foundation of the Vajrayanas inconceivable wisdom and methods.
Vajrayana can unhesitatingly employ its unique method of taking emotions as the path, because its basis lies in statements like, emotions are the radiance of the Buddha, and lotuses can only be found in wet mud, not where it's dry. Even if a so-called chair has only been used as a table, as soon as someone sits on it, it instantly becomes multifunctional. At that moment, all clinging to the idea that the chair only works as a table collapses, and from then on it can be used as both a table and a chair.
Go ahead and move it. There we go. From a more intellectual and practical perspective, emotions only become so-called emotions. So-called is important here when they are not accompanied by awareness. How does that work? Imagine you are peeing in the open air. Suddenly you notice someone walking directly towards you. What is your automatic reaction? To stop peeing. It's part of our conditioning. Similarly, when you feel extreme anger, jealousy, and pride, if you inject even a drop of the virus of awareness into that emotion, it will get sick. And a sick emotion is what you need, because a sick emotion is a weak emotion. The problem is that most of us leave it far too late to inject ourselves. And that delay helps our emotions become enormously fat and surprisingly agile. That is why Buddha offers us this path, and it's a path that can be distinguished from all others because simply being aware is entirely painless.
Most people expect that first injection of awareness to work immediately. But as it's the first time in hundreds of lifetimes that we have applied awareness to our emotions, the effect will only last for a split second. We also expect every scrap of jealousy or anger or pride to disappear instantly and forever. And obviously that doesn't happen. It's because we continue to experience emotions that some practitioners become disillusioned with their practice. Having spent so many years meditating and flattening hundreds of zafus, how is it possible still to feel jealousy? It's very discouraging.
Learn to be satisfied with consistency. Every time an emotion arises, just be satisfied that you remembered to inject it with that irritating virus of awareness. It'll take a few years to see any observable effects, but in time you will begin to notice your emotions as they arise. Eventually, you may even be able to laugh at yourself for feeling jealousy in the first place. Jealousy isn't the only emotion that can overwhelm you. All emotions can. Feeling ridiculous, for example.
Be- Beginners on the spiritual path have no idea what obstacles look like. Your responses to your emotional risings are like weeds in a flower bed, and unless you are a gardener, you won't know the difference. Learning to identify a weed as a weed will take time, but once you can do that, you are not doing badly. The wisdom discussed in the Vimalakirti Sutra and the wisdom behind the Vajrayanas you should do and thank the unthinkable are the same. Thanks to this wisdom, Buddhism has never been limited to one geographic region or race, nor has it become a survival kit for just one nationality or the byproduct of political struggle, psychological debate, or scientific investigation.
The Buddha's teachings and path to enlightenment were inspired by a pure experience of suffering. That experience triggered the wish to get to the bottom of what suffering really is, aroused the determination to completely rid human beings of suffering, and culminated in the realization that ignorance of the truth is the cause of all suffering.
Ultimately, Buddha Dharma leads to a final truth, the absolute truth. This absolute truth is far from easy to understand, yet it lies at the heart of all the fascinating, revealing, illuminating, and often hilarious conversations that we find in the Vimalakirti Sutra.
As I've said many times, it's impossible for someone like me to understand the teachings in this sutra, or for that matter, any of the Buddha's vast and profound teachings. More than 25 centuries have passed since the Tathagata, the king of the bipeds, the bull of a man, the prince of the Sakyas, the conqueror of the three worlds, the teacher of gods and humans and savior of all beings, pretended not to exist on this planet. In that time, the Buddha's teachings have spread to places as far away and exotic as the richly ornamented palaces of the Japanese and Chinese emperors, which are so vibrant and ornate that even Vimalakirti might have envied them. Some of the world's most altruistic, illustrious, and effective people, from Nagarjuna to Tang Empress Wu Zetian, have honored and adored the Buddha's words. Today, his words are being translated so that blue-eyed, freckled-nosed, mahogany and coffee-tinted beings with golden and coral-hued hair can also read, appreciate, and contemplate their wisdom. Those of you who actually take the Buddha's advice to heart will reap many rewards, not least of which is learning how to release yourself from the meaningless stress, tension, clinging, and obsession that so characterize modern life.
Once a teaching has been around for a while, it's important to consult and examine its source text. For Muslims, that source is the Quran. For Christians, it's the Bible. For the Jews, it's the Tanakh. The source of all the Buddha's teachings is the sutras, because it's the sutras that faithfully record the Buddha's own words. As the sutras are Buddha Dharma's bottom line, it's therefore crucial for all Buddhists to read, learn, and explore them with an open heart.
How much more is there to go, Kim, for the end of this section? And I'm wondering if we should stop here or we should go ahead and finish. Maybe we should go ahead and finish up the go up a little bit more. There are those. Okay. Go ahead and finish. There are those who, feigning open-mindedness and objectivity, which in reality is more like guilt and hypocrisy, try desperately to identify something good and worthwhile in philosophies that are essentially violent and hateful. Having done so, they put all their energy into convincing the rest of us that, although it's buried in brutal hostility, that shred of good makes a hate-generating philosophy worthwhile, even admirable. At the same time, out of jealousy or rage or whatever, others seem just as determined to find fault in a path that is overwhelmingly beneficial, compassionate, and useful. They go to great lengths to persuade anyone who will listen that, in spite of appearances, no philosophy can be that good, and there must be something fishy about it. In such a climate, it's even more important for Buddhists to examine our source material. This is why it's crucial that we translate the sutras and make them widely available as possible, not just for today's students, but to secure the future of Buddha Dharma.
You're probably wondering where I found the courage to attempt to write this text, or how someone like me could even think about introducing the words of the Perfect One. Some time ago, two worldly businessmen, Taekwon and Christy Chen, requested that I write a preface to a new edition of the Vimalakirti Sutra. I was so moved by the wholesomeness of their strong aspiration and wished to make the sutra available to as many people as they could that I agreed. Of course, the danger is that I end up somehow staining the Perfect One's teachings. Imperfect creature that I am. But when I thought about it, I realized that if this book can encourage you, its readers, to excavate your minds and extract just a few more good thoughts, if it can inspire you to make the effort to accumulate merit, if it can pique your curiosity enough for you to start exploring the vast and profound wisdom of the Buddha, then it's worth the risk. This is why I agreed to write this preface. My friend Jane Schultz helped me make it readable. Andreas Schultz, Du Yi, Helena Wang, Hong Jing Ru, Yang Feng, Jennifer Q, or Key, John Conti, Christian Yao, Naya Fang, Sarah K. Wilkinson, Yashina Shah Neg, and many others have put a great deal of effort into illustrating, translating, editing, proofreading, researching, correcting, and distributing it. May they and all who read hold and possess the sutra, achieve enlightenment. In the meantime, may we all encounter someone like Vimalakirti who has the courage to poke holes in our concepts, point out our hang-ups, and provoke our inhibitions.
Right. So we've finished the preface. Yay. Next week, we will begin this translation of the sutra. Well, does anybody move to share what they've come up with?
I can go. So I started off with deconstruct everything that is not the truth. And that was a quote. And then there's several other quotes in here. So, how do you view the Buddha? Vimalakirti says, beyond karmic formation. Sitting as Buddha's body, sitting as karmic body. I check in with those ideas while sitting often. And often with the response of judgments from karmic body, aches, pains, conditioning mind. At the beginning of the Vimalakirti class, there was a quote, meditate like you are not meditating, or you're not doing it right. Tonight we talked about, have I taught you? Asked the Buddha. No, you haven't, replied Subhuti. And Buddha agreed. Exactly. Buddha never taught. Sometimes I find the biggest shifts in thought are inside the prepositions, like get on the plane or get in the plane. But here it is, the I. I have not taught, but the I is different than Buddha. Deconstruct everything. Get down to only truth. No thoughts, no connections of previous behaviors to form concrete opinions. And I might have written more, but the clock bell rang. It's kind of like speed writing. It's just like, oh, here's what you get.
Thank you. I can read. So I also started out with sort of quotes. Emperor Wu asked Bodhidharma, what merit in donating funds, building temples, feeding the hungry? No merit. What is the meaning of the holy doctrine? Emptiness, no holiness. Who are you? Don't know. Poke holes in our ideas, call out our foolishness, provoke our inhibitions. Donald Trump, how are the ideas he espouses not just that? How to discern when a thought or a practice is what the writer calls violent, hateful, etc., and when it is deeply challenging our beliefs. I guess the sutra doesn't advocate harm, but then there are teachers who have sex with students. Is that a useful trick? How is it possible for one person to know absolutely what another person needs, who another person is, what another person needs and what trick to employ. We are fallible, each of us, all of us. Try not to do harm. Try not to make it worse. Try and fail and acknowledge the failure. Intend to do better.
I'll give it a go. I was kind of like Cassie. I was looking at this white piece of paper and words weren't forming themselves. I realized I needed to start typing something. So this is what kind of came out as time was running short. How convoluted and complex and simple this learning to make it all be its straightforward self. Again, not knowing seems one of the best paths to being, to knowing, sometimes left inspired, nurtured, other times left suspended in midair. Does this duality ever get ironed out without being released from the body? It seems there are numerous reminders that there are blessings with loss, no longer tried by those moments where I could only pretend to understand. Fewer problems that are harbingers. Nothing present moment ripe to become history. Content sometimes to just be biology. That's it.
I can share. It struck me that Vimalakirti has such reverence to Buddha. Though the Bodhisattvas also were enlightened, there were significant holes in their thinking. But he did not correct the Buddha, but bowed to him. It is funny to say I have not taught where his teachings were so many. What are teachings if they aren't teachings? Maybe just stimulants to bring out what was already inside his subjects. And then here's a drawing of Vimalakirti circumambulating Buddha. And I gave Buddha freckles because I could.
Awesome. I love what you chose to illustrate and how. It was brilliant. Thank you.
I'm going to share, but I didn't write. I'll tell you what I did. I went outside for a walk, and I didn't get but 10 steps, and I looked up at the sky, and I remembered having just recently viewed the photos that were taken by the most powerful telescope in the world right now, located in South America. And it's a telescope that is methodically taking photos of quadrants of the sky. And they believe that when they're done taking all of those photos, they will have photographed 200 billion, with a B, galaxies. And so I stood there looking at the sky where I don't see a single star, much less a galaxy, thinking 200 billion galaxies, what does that mean? That means some bigger, smaller, differently formed. They're in our own Milky Way. Our Milky Way is quite small. And that means 1 billion stars, at least, in each galaxy, in 200 billion galaxies. Each of them, if they aren't dead stars yet, because, the speed of light that travels to us, some of the stars we see are now gone, capable of supporting planets circling around them. So 200 billion galaxies, with billions of stars in each with the possibility of having planets around it, and each with the possibility of having life different than ours, life we've never seen, couldn't understand, different than ours on it. And I just stood there looking at the sky without just my little tiny box of sky, thinking, oh my gosh, what do I know? I know nothing, nothing. And that's my experience of trying to sit in Vimalakirti's seat. And as I listen to each of you, hear from your emotions, see through your eyes, feel through your skin and experiences. And as hard as I try, I still know nothing. Thank you for teaching me.
Would anyone else like to read or share? Looks like not. Okay.
Um,
Starlet.
I kind of wrote something that is not really anything. The thing is that the ending just came to me as I was listening to you guys talk and share. So this is what I wrote. I wrote poems of wisdom fueled by a paroxysm of pain. It was the only way to escape the pain. I wish I was a better student that learns without suffering. I wish there was a trick for me so I could learn without pain, without suffering. I wish I was Vimalakirti. I do also want to share that Melissa was not able to come today. She says hello to everybody. Her electricity was cut off. There's a big fire in Burnett right now of a recycling tire company, and all of it is happening at this time. But she really wanted to be here.
Yeah. I hope she and everybody up there are safe. And next week, we will start on the translation of the Sutra. All right. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Kim, can you stay
Thank you,
on?
everybody.
Thank you, Ed. Can you stay on a bit, Kim? Thank you. So, update on the tree stumps. Are you there? Okay. I'm not going to have them removed because it's turning into what feels like a quagmire. So the markings you saw were one company, I don't know if it was gas or it was electrical, saying that their line was clear. But in order to get a clear marking, that, in other words, they have no lines there, either electrical or gas. But in order to get that same marking, I sent photos of those markings to Rocky. From the remaining utility company, I have to have that hired out because Texas Gas or whoever, Austin Utilities, whichever the companies just won't do it.
I misread the markings. I
Ah.
didn't know what they meant.
He did, and I haven't talked to Rocky yet because I've been so tied up with doctor's appointments, and as I thought about it, I was thinking this is just turning into a much bigger thing than it has to be. And what is this about? It's an aesthetic issue. It's not an essential issue. So rather than hiring them out and calling, especially in the midst of all this busyness I have with appointments, with the medical stuff, I'm like, we're just going to do 3 stumps. I'm just going to keep it simple. So there is that. We need to talk about tomorrow. I want to give you a brief medical update. I've now had 2 MRIs, a series of x-rays, a nerve conduction velocity test. Have you ever heard of that?
Well, you talked about kind of a laser, a taser.
A taser, that one, and I have one new test that I have to do because in the MRI, and that doctor said, I think there's just a number of things going on. But in the MRI, just got the results today, they discovered 2 things, both of them, one of them fixable by surgery, and the other, which you start with the more conservative treatment and it works, that's great, but may eventually. One is called an adnexal cyst in my pelvic area near my spine. And it's a contained cyst, it's not a ganglion cyst, it's only 3.1 centimeters. But it'll have to be removed. But before they will remove that, they need to do an ultrasound, which is my next scheduled appointment. But the one that I think has been causing the greatest pain is called a gluteus medius tendinopathy. And AI was very helpful and actually sent me the perfect description of what that is. And it's a tear involving, it's a partial or complete tear of the tendon connected to the gluteus medius, which is the buttock. And then all the different causes pain in the side of the hip, difficulty walking, range of motion, and it just down the line nailed all of the symptoms I've had since September. And so I'm going to go get the sonogram for the cyst, and I'm going to wait to hear back from them. And
Wait, the cyst you said is not one that will immediately be removed.
well, I have to get the ultrasound first because they want the ultrasound before they will do surgery. That's
Oh, that's the one that's for the surgery. Yeah.
right. And this tear of the gluteus medius may not require surgery. It may, the conservative treatment is non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, physical therapy, corticosteroid injections, and then if it's a severe tear, and my doctor will know that, I mean, with all the tests they're doing, then they'll go to an endoscopic surgery of some sort. But that's the update so far. And I think I didn't know about the cyst, but as far as all that pain, I think that this nails it. Once I looked at that phrase and looked it up, it makes perfect sense why I've been having all this discomfort and why more physical therapy, more exercise has actually caused more harm. So that's the
Well,
It
so
is what it
are
is.
you hopeful that you can deal with this then?
Of course. I mean,
Good.
I don't have an option. I mean,
No, but that there are solutions to some of these.
oh, Kim, I don't go there. I never go there because you don't know until they actually do the procedure. So I don't even go, oh, good, it's going to get better. Oh, no, it's going to get worse. I'm just kind of like one foot in front of the other with medical issues, and then it'll be what it is, right? I remember my father-in-law got cataract surgery in both of his eyes and waited until Medicare would pay for it, and Medicare won't pay for it until it's so big that it's actually, I mean, you almost really need to pay for it yourself if you're going to go by Medicare standards. And after they did, he thought he'd see better, and it left him almost blind. And so even a simple procedure can go wrong, and even a complex procedure like heart transplant can just be phenomenally successful. So I don't go there. Yeah, I just need to sleep. It's not even the pain, it's the sleep deprivation. That's just, yeah. But one foot in front of the other. So tomorrow, I will catch up on the reading if you will tell me for our book discussion, if you will tell me where we left off, just,
Yeah, well, I sent it to everyone,
okay.
but that was a week ago.
We met last week, though. I wasn't there last week because
I know, and and then I sent it to everyone because someone else wasn't there. But did you get it?
well, see, I haven't, I've been on the road a lot, to appointments, so I will look. Give me just a moment. Let me look for Kim. Kim Mosley. And then my swelling's down with my abscess molar removed, so I'm really happy about that. Okay. What date did you send that, Kim? I've got several from you that I haven't.
Probably Tuesday.
Okay, Tuesday would have been the 24th. I'll look for it. If not, you know what I'll do?
Wait, I can find it.
Kim Leah book. Here's the, so you can catch up if you'd like.
Yeah, that's it.
Started on the book today and read to the bottom, page 7. Thank you. Got it. I'll do that tonight. How was the book gathering on Tuesday?
Really good.
Did Cyrus show up?
Did who?
Cyrus.
No.
I reached out to him and said, we missed you, miss your input. And he wrote back and said he's going through some personal issues. So I'll keep in touch with him. Okay.
Oh, good. And then Wednesday night, you're doing loving kindness.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Anything else?
No, that was it. Anything for me?
I don't think so.
Okay. I'll see you tomorrow then.
Okay, bye.